Do you need Leggings of the Fang? Well, I sure as hell needed them, and I had spent a lot of time in this goddamn dungeon. It probably took me a total of actually like 15 runs to finally get the Leggings of the Fang for me. And doing that in a dungeon group with a dungeon group who wants to do an entire run, or playing it with other people who just want to do the first boss runs, means there's a chance that I don't get the item. So I decided to actually solo this dungeon, and this is going to be me showing you guys how you solo this as a hunter if you want to go get those leggings yourself and you are worried that you might not be able to do it. Here I'm showing my talents and what I have. I have the Scorpid pet. This is the rare Scorpid that spawns in Dorotor, so it's a little bit better. It does have a 2-hour spawn timer, and you will have to level it up for this dungeon. But I got all this going, and it's been pretty good. Like when I first did this dungeon solo on my own, I actually used the boar and not the Scorpid pet. I didn't have Venom Sting, and my gear was significantly worse than it is now. But I was still able to do it with relative ease. It just took a little bit of time. So when you're going through this dungeon, you're typically, at least in the beginning, most of the time going to want to be pulling one mob at a time, because especially with the raptors, if it's one of the blue raptors and they're too close, so you pull more than one, when they get low HP, they can do a shriek that calls more, so then you might have to end up fighting more raptors, and that's not something that you want to do. You can skip over here to the right and jump down if you like dismiss pet, and then jump down into those two raptors and call pet, but you still have to be careful because there might be a blue raptor down there, and if it's close enough, it might pull some of the raptors that are a little bit further in. So we're going to go ahead and skip forward a little bit. Here I am just continuing to pull, one mob at a time. As I'm continuing to pull one mob, I usually pull them back to what I believe to be a safe area that it's unlikely to call more mobs. And I continue to do that until pretty much the whole front path area is clear. Once that front path area is clear, like I've pulled the ooze sometimes if it's in the way and it's currently padding it in the way, or if the Druid of the Fang is there, I might end up pulling them too, and then I usually go down and kill this ooze right here, because if I leave the dungeon, I'm going to need to probably kill it anyways. And it's relatively easy. You shouldn't be able to pull any pats down here, especially if you're high level. I came here initially at level 24. I'm now level 25, so it's even easier than when my first attempts were with the boar, but it is relatively easy overall. These crocodiles should not be a problem at all since they're non-elites. This is also a really good spot if you want to farm perfect, deviant scales for your belt upgrade if you don't have a belt that's already pretty good. Unfortunately, by the time I got all my perfect deviant scales, I had a belt that essentially was the same as the one that I was about to make. It was like slightly better. It had a little bit more stamina and a little bit more spirit when I finally made the actual blue pattern. So it wasn't as big an upgrade by the time that I finally got it. But you're going to be going through here and you're going to be killing all the crossglyphs that are in here. They're super easy since they're non-elite and you're fighting elites and you're much higher level than them, so it's super easy. Now, when you get up into this area over here, there is a lot of different mobs. Now, there are elite snakes, small and big ones, and there is Druids of the Fang. Druids of the Fangs have a ranged attack, so you do have to kind of LOS them if you want to be safe. Now, I've become pretty confident with this area. Normally, I would pull these mobs one at a time and drag them just down to the side, over to this corner and LOS every single one of them, so there was no chance of another mob being pulled. However, I don't always do the things that I think that I should do and get a little overconfident and fight 3 mobs at once. Fortunately, I've gotten to the point where I have enough gear, I have Venom Strike, I had at least like half pre-bis before doing BFD, so fighting 2 or 3 people at once is not the worst, but it will definitely put me towards my limit. I will be spamming Mind attacks as well. Oh, speaking of the ruins that I have, I actually forgot to mention that. Should have mentioned that earlier in the video. The ruins that I have equipped are the Beastmaster rune, because that gives you 30% more health and damage to your pet, as well as makes your pet be able to taunt when they growl instead of just generate a lot of threat. You will see here that I actually did meet my maximum here. I did pull too much. I wasn't ready, didn't do enough damage, and I'm going to be over here kiting this mob for a bit until I fully take it out, which is I'm basically going to be, shooting it when I can, doing wing clips, doing concussive shots. and eventually it'll go down. Not a big issue. It does take a little bit of time, and this is why you should do what I say and not do what I do, which is probably pull one mob at a time just to keep it safe, to prevent things like this, because there happen to be 2 roaming pats at that point. Because I have gotten faster at this, usually the pats would be a little bit higher up by then and I wouldn't have to worry. But I did have to worry here, so pull them one at a time just to be safe. If you pull 2, you're going to be fine, but if you pull 3, you are reaching points that you probably don't want to reach. But we ended up clearing them out, so it's totally fine. You're going to keep progressing up here as you go. And my cat's jumping on my desk, so I apologize if you guys can hear him. Let me get him down. Snow! It is not your time for attention. He will get attention later. But anyways, I'm over here waiting to regen. We're going to start going up and eventually taking these guys out one at a time, pulling them back to an area that's not going to lead them to pull mobs. Remember that the Druid of Fangs, when they get low, they typically run away. You will also have to deal with Druid Slumber while you are fighting these guys, and it's probably one of the most annoying things doing this solo, because you can be asleep for up to 13-15 seconds, so you're just sitting there while your Scorpid is attacking, and that's why you don't typically want to pull more than one of them at a time, because if you are fighting 2 Druids of the Fang, it can end up having you get slumbered a lot and be a giant pain in your rear. You're always going to be the one that gets Druid of the Fang, because you're always going to be the one that's second on threat. There are times where like it might happen to your Scorpid, right, because you pulled and they decided to cast it immediately, so you're top on the threat. And your pet hasn't casted Taunt yet, so your pet will be the one that gets slept, and that could be a problem at times. You pet is only asleep for 15 seconds, so you can probably survive through that. These guys aren't doing such crazy amount of damage is that you're gonna, fall down and need to call life alert for you to be saved. You should be fine when these things do happen. So we're gonna be coming up here and again pulling one at a time as we go through. And we are going to ignore that pack over in the corner. There's no reason to fight that pack. They are not a threat. They won't be in the way. They won't ever attack you. There is lots of pats. Once again, we have another ooze coming through here. I believe there's also another Druid of the Fang or 2 that pats through this hallway, as well as one of the larger Deviant Vipers are in here as well. You're going to want to be aware that when you're pulling this, that there are no pats that are going to be able to come while you're fighting, because that's going to turn your fight from going pretty well to being a struggle in some way. Also, the reason why I use this Scorpid is because it's freaking really strong. Even though this Scorpid was heavily nerfed recently, they took away, or at least drastically reduced, the AP scaling on that was being applied to his poison. The poison is still really, really good and still does a lot of damage for this level, so it's still probably one of the best pets for you to have. These Deviant Pythons are also not elites, so they're very easy to take out. You can usually just do a multi-shot and melee them down with your pet, and then focus on the Druid of the Fang after, and you'll be totally fine. There is one Druid of the Fang pack that can come there. You can see it behind, but it's usually not an issue. So most packs are going to be in packs of 2, or just the Deviant Vipers, or the smaller ones as well, the Adders. And they are relatively simple. You're just going to keep pulling through, pulling the non-elites, pulling maybe 1 or 2 mobs at a time, and keep clearing them and going through. Also, skinning is a great way to get a lot of leather in here. You're going to need some pretty big bags, though, because you're going to be picking up a lot of junk while you're in this dungeon. So over here, there is going to be a pack that is to our right. And that pack to the right does have quite a bit of mobs in it, but it is completely avoidable. There's no reason that you have to fight it. And you can avoid them completely. I happened to pull them this time, unfortunately, because I was not paying attention to where the pat was, to how close they were. So I ended up pulling both the Druid of the Fangs, but it was fine. It's not a big deal. But you can very easily bypass the one that is attached to this camp, or right next to this camp, if you slide against the wall to the left. It's very easy to get away from them. And that's a perfect example of what I was talking about, what they do run away. When they run away, you are at the biggest risk of pulling another pack that you don't want it to do. And right there, I was also put in the slumber, so that was pretty bad. And those are situations in which, well, If that happens, you might have to just get the hell out of there. And it's relatively simple to get out of there. You can jump down from here. It's not that far of fall damage that you're going to be taking a lot of damage and die. And then once you are down there, you run off kind of back towards the entrance till you get to the water. Your pet should despawn if it hasn't died, and then you just have to wait for the pats to reset, or the pack mobs to reset. And then you'll be able to summon your pet and run back up, and everything should be fine. You can redo it. Now, this is a bad pull that can happen right here. There's 3 mobs up here. They all kind of walk next to each other. There's also some non-elite snakes, but they almost never pull unless they're right next to the snakes when you pull. And you got to be careful. You really have to get it when the little snake is a little bit farther away from everything, because if they are even a little close, you might pull them, which will then end up pulling the other one. So you really want to wait until they're spread apart so that you can pull them one at a time. So this is a perfect example of when they're far enough apart that I can pull the other Druid of the Fang, and I am fighting him here. Now, what you can do instead, and I don't know why I didn't do it here, but I usually pull Druid of the Fangs like this, and I will run behind the rock pillars so that I can line of sight them, so they'll come up next to me. My guess is that I'm just becoming way too confident in these runs, so I don't really care about doing that, and then we'll go ahead and take out the other snake as well, and then we should be fine. See, here's an example of me pulling the other snakes by getting too close, but at this point, I'm pretty strong, so it doesn't matter too much. I did put down an ice trap just in case, so when things are really bad, or if you're really just not sure or confident that you're going to be able to do a pull, you could do it so that you pull and your pet is on passive or defensive, so it won't attack until you get hit, or you tell it to hit something, and pull one of the mobs into your ice trap. It's not going to be in the ice trap the entire time, because fights are going to take longer than the ice trap time, but it will at very least reduce some of the damage if you want to do that. It's not necessary, but it can be very useful. I very rarely do use it because it has to be set up out of combat, and you kind of have to play around where you put it down, and I find that it's not really necessary to take out most of these mobs. So we're going to be going through here, clearing these mobs one at a time, pulling any pats that come up. There are 2 pats here as well that you'll want to take out. You could wait for them to come and take them out when they get higher up into the cavern, and so you won't have to deal with them to fight. There's a 2-pack over here with some snakes. They're relatively easy to take out as well. The pack to the right, which is just a single druid, is not one that you'll need to fight unless you accidentally pull it. Here's an example of me actually doing the line of sight that I'm talking about. I pull one of them, I run over here, and both of them will come, and then I'll have my pet pick up aggro on both of them. This is also an example of where my pet got put to sleep because I was highest on the threat meter, and my pet was second on the threat meter. So when you do this, like I said, you just need to calm down. Like, it's not going to take that much damage. You can take health potions with you. So, you know, if you're really not, feeling safe in here, you can go ahead and just have those with you. I also bring minor mana potions just in case I have to really start pumping my heals. There's a pack coming up here too, which I didn't take out earlier, but I was able to just slide around to the side because the pack kind of keeps close to the wall, and I didn't end up pulling it. But if I did pull it, it would be fine. It's the same standard thing. Pick them up, take them down. 3 mobs usually isn't a big issue if you're prepared for it, and it shouldn't be an issue in this case. But be careful. If you want to prevent these things from happening, just pay attention to the pats and wait for them to come. This is going to extend your run a little bit, but for most people, especially in the beginning, when you're first learning this route and going through it before you become confident in what you can do in this Cobra runs, you're going to want to take it slow, which is what I did in my very first runs, especially since I was less geared at the time and I didn't have Scorpion. So this pat, you got to be careful as well. I would recommend pretty much always LOSing this pack because it's so close to the boss. In this circumstance, I believe I actually did have the Druid of the Fang end up running towards the boss, ended up pulling the boss. So I did have to vacate out of there and jump down and have the mobs reset, because there was no way we were going to be able to start this fight at 60% HP on my Scorpid while there was still another elite up, and I was slumbered, so it was just a bad time overall, and there's the 3 other non-elite snakes are there, so I just get out of there. I'm pretty sure my pet actually doesn't end up despawning before I got out of there, so I'm going to have to revive them. wait for stuff to reset, and then go back up there. But as long as you're down here, it will eventually reset. You'll be able to resummon the pet and go all the way back up. I did end up taking at least out the Druid of the Fang, so there was only this one little snake left, so it really wasn't a big issue. Now, this boss isn't hard. The only thing is that he can do a lot of damage, so sometimes, depending on how you handle the ads, the little snakes that are there, there's plenty of ways to handle them. You can just have your Scorpion attack them and take them out fairly easily. You can have them individually go at it, or you can just multi-shot and fight them in melee while your Scorpion is fighting the boss. I go back and forth because it really doesn't matter too much most of the time, though probably multi-shotting and just taking them out yourself is probably the best thing that you can do here because it saves the extra damage on your pet. And this boss can do a lot of damage, especially once he shifts into being a snake, because the snake gives them like extra melee DPS and things like that. One thing to prevent a lot of damage on this boss is probably to hit them with Scorpion Sting, because that reduces their strength and their agility by 20, which is a very powerful way to keep them from doing a lot of damage to your pet. Usually, I like to do that anytime they shift into a snake, because it basically makes them go from having all this extra attack power to actually having less than they had before, since 20 agility and 20 strength is like 40 attack power, and I think they gain something like 25 to their melee attacks, or just straight flat damage, or something along those lines. But it's relatively easy overall. This time I do have my Scorpion die because I just had him take too much damage by the little snakes, but I didn't get the drop, unfortunately. I have went through this dungeon many different times and have gotten many different items, except Leggings of the Fang until very recently. I finally got it yesterday with a duo run with a shaman. I got it on my first drop, and I was going to keep running with the guy, but he just left the group after I won the roll. So, unfortunate for him, he would have had some easy rolls, but I guess maybe he didn't feel confident just two-manning it. But anyways, if this video helped you guys out, hope that you get your drops for your leggings quicker than I got mine, because it took an exceptionally long time for me to do this. I probably spent over 15 hours in this dungeon, and mostly because they did full runs, probably for the first like 4 or 5 runs that I did before I just started doing Cobra runs on my own. Also, I do have the ability to do solo Septis runs, or Serpentis runs. So if you guys want to see a solo Serpentis run, I can do that as well. I also did that when I was in here the very first time, when I was level 24 and had a much lower pet and just a boar. That was level 23 at the time, so that's also possible. I actually kind of find him easier than Septis just because he doesn't have extra ads. He does heal a lot, which is annoying, but once he's out of mana, he's really not a difficult boss at all. So if you wanted me to show you the solo run to get through there, I can do that as well. It's not difficult to actually fight him, but the actual pathing to get to him could be a pain in the ass, especially because it's very easy to pull other packs once they start running away. But anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye!